Well, welcome to the Devon and Cornwall Record Society's latest podcast. We have Lesley Trotter with us this morning. Good morning, Lesley.
Good morning, Todd.
And we've got a Cornish title again, which is great. Now, Cornwall Herstory. Can you tell us a bit about the book? It's a great title.
Yeah, well, it's playing on the Herstory history side of things. And it's a book that came out of a conference that we held down at Penryn in 2019, which had really come about because I was researching the wives who were left behind by immigrating miners. So I was meeting a lot of people who were doing similar research on women's history in Cornwall. And I thought, well, let's try and get together and have a conference, which we did. And the book basically has come out of that after a load of COVID hassles and things like that. So this is it. It's Cornwall Herstory, essays from the Cornwall Women's History Conference, Penryn 2019. And it is literally a collection of essays written by the speakers at the conference, which covers a whole different range of aspects of women's history in Cornwall, from women ship owners, women bankers, women great thinkers, a whole load of different aspects of women's history from different authors.
I mean, it's interesting because we have Julia Neville's edited book on Devon women at the same time as we've got, not a companion, but, a comparative book, really. What kind of sources did your various authors use? I mean, are they straightforward history documents and newspapers as we recognize them?
To a certain extent. I think one of the really interesting things about women's history is you have to go digging deeper to find those stories. It very much comes out through micro-histories. So a lot of the authors have really had to go deep into estate correspondence, into trade records. I mean, Helen Doe's done a chapter on women ship owners. So she's really had to look at port books and read detailed records to try and pull out the bits of information that are there about the women's ownership of the ships. So I think that's one of the most interesting things about women's history is that need to dig deeper and use sources in a different way, not the usual things that one might go to.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, women are slightly in the majority.
Yes.
But that doesn't matter as far as expression in society. So the documents in this, I mean, I used to joke and say women were invented in 1914 because that's when you suddenly have much more record, survival. But it is an interesting fact that you do have to search with different antennae to find women.
Absolutely. And I think that's actually a lesson that could be learned for history in general, because if you go deeper, looking at sources in different ways and analysing them in different ways, you're going to take a completely different perspective on history as a whole, and ask different questions.
So you're in your conference and you have a group of people. I don't know, are they all women? Are there any men? Or is it just women?
No, not all women. The book includes John Deering's done a lot of work on banking in Cornwall. So he was talking about a surprising number of women who ran banks or started banks in Cornwall. And Paul Holden, who has a long association with Lanhydrock, writes about how Anna Maria Agar really turned the estate around and made it a profitable estate. So no, definitely not all women.
So you've got your men and your women you're listening to, and with those surprises as well, what other things come out of the conference and the papers that I think people would say, oh gosh, I never thought of that before?
I think one of the things that struck me so much was across the whole stories, it seems that women really only came into their own so much basically after the death of their husbands in many cases, because nearly all the women who really become noticeable are either spinsters or widows. And it's almost rather sad that we have people like Elizabeth Kahn, who was such an amazing thinker about all sorts of aspects of social reform, and she's featured in the book. She only writes in her own name after her father dies. And in the same way, the women running shipbuilding companies or turning estates around, again, you know, they come to the fore when they're put in that position and get the opportunity to show what they can do in a man's world, if you like.
I mean, it's interesting. You don't know if they don't want to overshadow the man that they're meant to be, or if the man doesn't want them to overshadow the person that they're meant to be supporting, or if they just finally are able to get on with their own lives. I mean, you know, it's such a big question, isn't it?
It's a huge question. And I think part of it is also, I mean, for married women in the 19th century or any time before then, really, your life is taken up with children.
Yeah.
Giving birth, looking after children. Most married women could expect to be having a child every other year.
Yeah,
So, I mean, just the sheer energy involved in that doesn't leave an awful lot of space to go off exploring and inventing, perhaps in the same way as the men could do.
Yeah.
But I also think there's probably a story behind the fact that a lot of wives were probably active through their husbands in the way that they influence things as well.
Yeah, silently.
Yeah.
Or silent for the records, at least.
Yes, but influential, but in a quiet female type of way behind the scenes.
Which society may have known about, not recognized, but certainly not have recorded very easily for us to pick up upon.
That's it. It doesn't really appear in the histories. Yeah.
Well, how does a reader find your book?
Okay. The publisher is the Institute of Cornish Studies. So the best way is to email them directly. And the email address is Cornish Studies, all one word, at exeter.ac.uk. It's part of the University of Exeter.
Right. And it costs how much?
It costs £11 plus postage and packing.
Right. And you're going to hold up the cover again so we can see.
There you are.
Which I think is a very clever use of the flag.
I was quite chuffed with that. Yes,
no.
It's slightly subvertive, but it's you know.
No, it's very inventive, really.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you very much for your time. And I hope the Institute is flooded with requests after this.
It's been selling very well, I have to say.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Well done and congratulations. And thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
No, stop.